Hey, this is Lee Balcom, and we've been talking a lot about how do you save your marriage. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what's behind that in your relationship. And the reason we're doing that is because I have a question. And this question, I'm going to say it's from M, so we don't go too far into that. I'm going to skip a lot of the background details because I don't want to be too revealing. But I've invited you to send in your questions too. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can send it to YouTube at savethemarriage.com. If you are listening by podcast, my Save the Marriage podcast, you can send it to podcast at savethemarriage.com. I'm trying to kind of answer on both mediums at the same time so that you can get it no matter how you like to receive the information from me. So this is a little bit different for this very reason. A lot of times I'm talking about what do you do when your marriage is in trouble to get it back. And this is more about how your marriage can get into trouble because there's a basic kind of platform for this, like what's going on in your marriage. And I want to talk it through with you, okay? So this is kind of the question, right? They've been talking about having kids and they've got one looking at maybe another child, and they ask this question, or this person asked this question. I'm starting to wonder, can two people who want success really have a family as well? I feel there's a sacrifice, and that if we don't pursue growing our family, I have to sacrifice my desire to have another child, or if we keep trying, my spouse has to sacrifice my spouse's time, which my spouse has sadly said that my spouse has already done. But I get what I want. And so M says, it feels quite impossible, and it feels like maybe we really can't have it all. So let me just talk. I'm going to kind of approach this from a couple of different levels, because if you're familiar with my work, you also know that I do a lot of work about how do you thrive in life. It was one of my books on Thrive Principles and the Immutable Laws of Thriving, and some other works about how do you thrive in life. Because I think that we've gotten a little sidetracked on how do we rate success. And this affects marriages. Because as far as I can tell, when people get married, they're headed for a life together that has all of this possibility, right? Now, I often think about the fact that, as you're headed down life, however that unfolds for you, every turn cuts off some other possibilities, right? As you go down, there are all these side streets or different routes you could follow to get through your life. And as you choose one, you don't choose another. And sometimes those are routes that have several things together. And so I've met people who have become so focused on, for instance, the money in the bank, that is their only thing they're going to go for. Whatever it took to get there, they were going to do that. Other people go, no, you know what? I'm more trying to find something that's meaningful. Now, what's really great for people is they find something that is both meaningful and sustaining in their life. That's the magic. And then you add on the other piece. So that's a part of this process of recognizing that we are choosing options. And kind of the fun thing of seeing young people is how many options they have in front of them. As we get a little further along, you realize there are things that are not going to happen. There are possibilities that are no longer in my reach. I've chosen paths that have eliminated other paths. And as I grow older, even other things will become more restricted on what is even possible for my body to do. And when we're talking even about having a child, there are those restrictions, right? And so there are lots of pieces of this puzzle that are in front of us. And one of the things that often happens is we get hyper-focused on, this has to be my definition of success. This is it. This is what it means to succeed. And when we do that, sometimes we eliminate other possibilities. So when we say, is it possible to have success? If that's what we're going for, is it possible to have success in a family? As if having a family is not a part of success. Only because in culture, there are these parameters like, how far have you gone up the ladder? How much money do you have in your bank account, in your 401k, in your IRA, in your investments. How many homes do you own? How many houses? How many toys? How many, and on it goes. And it becomes a material measure. And then there are those who see that that's not how they measure it at all. It's there for them. It's in connections and relationships. And so success would be having a family and them, being able to move forward in successful ways. Now, the question is, which is right? It's actually a trick question. They're both right. However you decide to measure success can be right. I do believe that there are some ways we mess even any answer up, right? For instance, if you're trying to create success, but all you're doing is pulling towards you and not expanding into the world, if you're not helping to leave the world better than you are, that's maybe like, a monetary success, but in terms of meaning and purpose, I think we lose track of that. And so there are many times that we can end up in dead ends because we're pursuing it in ways that in the end don't really bring more to us. A lot of research has shown us that what really matters is connections in the end. Connections in the end. Now, how you define connections, again, raises the question of what that looks like, right? But we do know that when people rate the success of their life towards the end of their life, they often talk about the relationships, their family, and all of the pieces of the friends, family, community, as ways of looking at their success. So you have to have that in there. And so now we've talked about the thriving piece of this. What do you define as success, and how do you define that? Now let's talk about how that fits into marriage. What this writer, this person, the question comes from, M, is doing is missing a central piece of this equation, and that is we. When it's posited this way, it's what do I want versus what do you want? And what that misses is the possibility of asking the question, what would we want? What is best for us, our path in life? What is the most rewarding for us? And this is what often happens when people get stuck in a place in life. We get into that place where we realize we really have become you versus me, not we. Every relationship starts with you, me. Every relationship. And some relationships get closer and closer. So when I first met my wife, there was my wife, at that time, her, there was you, there was me. We didn't have a relationship. We met, we had something of a spark, had some conversation, but it was still you, me. We weren't dating. We didn't have a commitment together. There was just you, me. Over time, we began to date. And so there was a you and me, it was this close connection, but we hadn't really made a commitment. And at some point we decided that we were dating each other and only each other, you and me, you and me. And as we moved forward, we decided that we wanted to make that a permanent relationship. And that for us looked like marriage, right? And in marriage, you have an opportunity, and this is the opportunity that either leads you on the path of success or leads you astray. Struggles, divorce, difficulties. Now, just because you go this way, success, doesn't mean everything's easy. You still have lots of work to do. It's just that when people move in this direction, they generally find a way forward. When they get moved over here, they generally get stuck. So what's here? You and me. I mean, that sounds good, right? On the outside, you're like, oh, you and me. That's great. It's you and me. The and part, we're joined together. This, though, is we. We're together. We are a team. You're building a we. We. The unit. And that doesn't mean you lose the individuals. That's a lot of times people say, well, over here you still have the individuals, right? You didn't lose them over here. I often am careful to use sports analogies, but I'm going to do it again here. It's a team, right? In a team, you're joining together to move the process along, and how you're going to do that can vary. So how you say we're successful can vary. You may say we're successful because we got the championship. We're the world champions. Or you could say, we did well in our division, or we were moved better as a team. We had less fouls. I mean, there are lots of ways you might define that, right? And it may be based on kind of where you're moving towards. I mean, let's face it. If you're saying we're the world champions, that means one team can get there. But there are lots of ways a team can say, okay, that was a successful game. I would say it was a successful game because they played together as a team, right? They worked together as a team. And that was one of the things when my child was playing basketball and I was trying to help coach the team. I wanted them to play as a team. We weren't going to win every game. We didn't have the talent pool to win every game, but I wanted them to play as a team. I wanted them to cooperate together to get to a common goal. When you're over here, you and me, if you don't make that transition to a team, becomes you versus me. It's kind of like being on a team where one person keeps, hogging the ball, right? After a while, you're like, now you've made it all about you, and people get resentful and upset. Same in a marriage. If you're always getting your way, at some point, I'm going to be upset about that and resent that. You versus me is where you and me goes if you don't make the turn to we. And so what this letter represents is the fact that the struggle has become you versus me, or more correctly, what you want about this child and what I want about this child versus what I want about this child, rather than what do we want to do about a child and our success and our future together. That changes the equation in ways that require some conversation and communication. Because when you're asking a question, what would we want out of this? It is completely different than what would you want? What would I want? That's easy. It's binary. One or the other. Third option is what comes out of this. The third option, as I've talked about it many other places, a third option is often much more powerful, much more fulfilling, much more satisfying, much more representative of the people involved, because they've asked the we question. The we question: what would be best for us? How do we want to join together in this? Not how do I get my way versus how you get your way. And so the question is, can we be successful or have a family is binary. Just notice that whenever we're going this or this, it's binary. The question is what success looks like. If we want to have a family, how do we move towards that? And what does that family look like? Within the realms of our possibilities, what does that family look like? And then how do we move forward and continue in that process? How do we support each other in that process? My big answer is, please don't make this binary of success versus family. The choice is we versus getting caught in you versus me. We will find an answer to that. We will work through this. We will find what fits for both of us if we sit down and wait for a place of empathy, of connection, of support for each other, of recognizing that we may have different ways that we play on a team, right? Different players play it a little bit differently, and they're trying to bring it together to work it best as a team. Don't let the competition be within the relationship. Don't let the binary choice be within the relationship. You're out as a we to win your process to the life you want based on the path you, meaning the we, want to follow. So I may have dodged your question. I can't answer for you if you have to sacrifice success for family. I would say that's a binary question, and that doesn't even get to what's really behind this. And I want to get what's behind this. It's become you versus me. Change the question to we. Then find the answer. And that is the question that fits for everyone. Again, if you've got a question, send it to me at YouTube at savethemarriage.com or at podcast at savethemarriage.com, depending on how you're getting contact from me. And if you need help with how do you get to that we, even in a troubled you versus me relationship, check me out at savethemarriage.com. That's savethemarriage.com. This is Lee Balcom wishing you the best as you work to save your marriage.